Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. So, what is the experience you're creating for your customer, and how are you taking that in-store event experience, for example, and expanding it, taking it across other digital channels, especially in the wake of COVID-19? Is the experience you're creating something meaningful for your customers' lives, or just something splashy for your brand? Christian Gani is the managing director of Match Marketing Group. And on this episode, we'll discuss experiential marketing, scaling an experience, personalization, working with agencies, influencers, post-pandemic experiences in the wake of COVID-19, spec Miatas, Dave's Killer Bread, Coursefield, and a lot more. So let's tune in to an experiential marketer with an experiential shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Christian, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background story in your career today.
Yeah, thanks, Kenneth.
You bet.
Pleasure to be here. My background is really sort of born in being an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
I think my entire life I've been associated with cars or speed or competition, and that has driven me to this point. I mean, I've spent my career just coming out of college in the marketing background, with marketing and communications as my background. And one of the stories that I like to tell is that, when I first started working in the automotive industry at Lexus at the dealership level, I was put through a training program where I met an automotive marketing agency. And I knew right away that's what I wanted to do, focus on automotive and marketing. It sort of brought those two worlds together for me, and beat down the door of the CEO for many a month as a 23-year-old. And that's how my career got started. It's spanned time in the US, time in Canada, time in Europe, both on the client and agency side. I'm now based in Boulder. Love it more than anything, and not leaving anytime soon.
Yeah, well, when we got introduced, someone had pointed out to me that you're an adrenaline junkie as well, and I know that you drive a spec Miata, which is what, part of the club series of cars?
Yeah, it's an amateur racing series. We race here locally in Colorado. You're able to race across the country if you're so inclined, but it keeps me busy. It keeps me focused. It's one of the few times, I think, I would say, where you have to be 100% focused on just that task.
Yeah.
We're so used to today having emails or chats or phone calls coming in and multitasking. In a car at speed, when you're inches away from your competitors, you don't have any time for that. You've got to be singularly focused, and it really helps drive a lot of that energy.
As somebody who drives way too fast all the time, I get that completely. But why a Miata? I'm a large guy. I played football, and when I played football, I weighed like 265. I mean, I was at the max of a heavyweight level, and I had a Miata when I was very young, but
yeah.
It didn't really have as much horsepower as I anticipated for the Corvette I owned later, but it was a lot more nimble to drive as well. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, why Miata is a good question. Number one, you can beat the tar out of them and they don't break, which is great if you're not mechanically inclined, as I am not. Number two, it's a spec series. So for most people, what that means is it's really down to the driver's skill and not necessarily the performance of the car. So if you're racing in some other series that don't have quite the rule structure that we have in spec Miata, you end up getting into a horsepower war or war for dollars. Basically, it's not necessarily focused on the driver, and that's why spec Miata to me is reliable, relatively safe, and truthfully, on days when the Porsche Club's out there, I really enjoy it. Because they blast down the straight and you catch them in the corners and you find them looking up at the rearview mirror saying, "Hey, didn't I pass that?" And that's it. Yeah. You nod your head and say, I'm on your tail." So it keeps us in a financial structure that's happy, but also in a competitive structure that focuses on you, not the equipment.
Plus, if it wrecks, the repairs are a lot cheaper than a Porsche. But
I don't talk about wrecks for bad juju reasons.
Yeah.
But yes, I've had my fair share of close calls with the wall and competitors. Let's just say that.
I have used, and this is a great example. I should have used it on a previous episode I just posted with Neil Patel. But with racing, it's a perfect analogy of optimization.
100%.
A lot of people think of the brand new channel as where to always go with your marketing or advertising efforts. But really, when you look at racers, especially IndyCar or Formula One or NASCAR, they're pretty much the same car, and pretty much just a few companies make the engine, but you see those little tweaks, and it's just it's amazing, which has nothing to do with the topic we were going to talk about today, but I had to bring up the cars early. So
Love it.
we're going to talk a little bit about experiential marketing. So explain how you think the modern marketer today should understand what experiential marketing is and what it's not.
Really good question. What experiential marketing is an opportunity for brands to create a story and to invite consumers into hopefully creating their own narrative and own relationship with a brand. And what it isn't necessarily or hasn't been to date, I'd like to come back to this at some point, is more of a lower funnel, highly scrutinized and data driven activity on the lower end. It typically tends to, introduce brands or products in an interesting and dynamic way that has some sense of appeal and that relies upon a consumer to sort of agree to this social contract. You, the brand, are going to afford me, some experience or sample or behind the wheel experience, and I am going to give you my time. And so that social contract of time for reward has to be met at all times. And so for me, there's been a bit of a shift in recent times. We've always said that experiential's gotten a pass at being really data driven and focused. And I don't think you get that anymore.
No.
I know that clients are looking for return on investment that is directly related to what they're spending. And if we can't deliver that, then our shelf life is going to be real short.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely come back to that. So, how is that different, though, than the decades of marketing that we've been doing? I'm not talking about advertising.
Yeah, good. I mean, evolution is actually ironically closely related to data, in my opinion. If you go back, 10 or 12 years, if you look at just the automotive industry, it was really like, let's go to where the people are and let's just get as many as we can through our product. And the hope would be that some of them are in market or some of them, remember this experience and that drive for some reason. But it effectively equated to, let's go to a partner location, let's seek out those individuals that might have some affinity to our brand, and let's do some kind of experience for them. I think where it shifted and where we see tremendous benefit with experiential is in how it has become extraordinarily personalized, and that transcends every category. That could mean, what does the test drive look like for me, Christian, that's different for you, Shark? That might be two left-hand turns, a right, and then another one, or it might be a highway drive for you, and it might be a little bit more of the curves and the bends for me, or it might just be what the approach looks like and how those are customized. You've got trigger points that might be, or competitive influences that might dictate how we reach out to you specifically. Hey, have you thought about your 5 Series that's coming up for lease, and why we think an Aviator might be a good choice for you? So the data and the mining of that, both in terms of how we seek and find the right, most opportunistic, consumers for an experience, and then what we do for that experience has become incredibly personalized. And I think that's the biggest shift for experiential these days.
Well, and that's just more of a digital marketing approach, then, really, right? I mean, you're not really able to scale that kind of personalization for an in-person type event or spectacle or whatever. But you're talking about it mostly from a digital marketing perspective.
I mean, I guess I'll say yes without
And let me
fully
back
maybe.
this up. The reason why, and as somebody who really loves this topic, if you go research most of what experiential marketing talks about in practice, it's always the example of some in-store event, or Landshark did a thing where they were at a pool, or one of your clients, Adidas, did something with a basketball at a hoop, which is all great, but when you scale that out, it becomes it has to be done for the most part from a digital perspective.
Scale is one of the topics that I speak about most often to clients, because that example I just gave you about, let's go to some state fair and get as many
Exactly.
people
Yeah.
through the products as possible. Well, that's a scale thing, and we've gotten used to that over 30 years of the evolution of XM being like, well, I spent $1 million and I got 5,000 so and so consumers through this product. This year we're aiming for 6,000. Whereas I'm in a bit of a different space. I'm trying to work with a scalpel and not with a hatchet, and really get focused on, Christian drives a BMW. He's 3 months from his lease expiration. He is in a shopping mindset. So what can I offer him? Perhaps not at scale, but perhaps on such a high personalized level that it makes it almost impossible for him to say, well, no, I'm not interested in this because I'm not shopping, or it's, too far away. So yes, I'm saying yes to your answer.
It's basically offering experiences, targeted experiences to an addressable target. Because
Correct.
I
But
worked in addressable TV and addressable targeting for quite a while, so that's where I'm really thinking about that example you just brought up. But you're
yeah,
about to
and
add?
well, but then that's exactly right. But I think one piece that I would just say is that word targeted.
Sure.
It's become bastardized
Yeah.
over the
Oh,
years.
completely. Yeah.
Let's go. I'll go back to that state fair example. Like, it's targeted. What exactly does a state fair target? Is it the turkey leg carrying truck buyer? Maybe. Or is it Christian and his family that, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or is it Christian and his family that are just out for a good time? And I'm not a turkey wielding truck driver. You know what I mean? So, like, it just, it's important to recognize that the term targeted means very different things depending upon what layer of sophistication you're putting behind it. And scale plays a role in that as well.
How do you really look then at scaling this then with budget? For example, I can put ad dollars towards other efforts and drive a serious amount of growth in the short term. And in experiential marketing, still, if I'm putting dollars towards it, again, addressing that kind of target can sometimes just be judged or measured or executed against in a campaign setting as opposed to providing a longer term type experience.
Yeah. So I have one theory that we've been working with for a while, and that's since, I'll call it maybe a decade now, since 2010, is that anything that we do from an experience based perspective has to have more output and has to reach more people than just have attended that one event. Content plays a huge role with that. Influencer and partnerships play a huge role with that. And even media partnerships in some cases play a role with that. If we're a sponsor at a tennis event
Sure.
and we're a coffee brand, we want to use and leverage that relationship as much as humanly possible. But when you look at it from the inverse, Shark, if I have a media spend that I'm sort of media or budgetary spend that I'm applying towards some kind of media, I don't necessarily have the experience that comes with it at all times, right? So we're playing in a role that is multi-dimensional, omni-channel, if you will, and that delivers more than just those people that have attended or have come to said experience. So that's one way, is that we've really got to broaden that reach. And connecting all of those dots together is sometimes difficult. There's interagency teams and there's clients, but I've been a client as well, and I know you have as well. And if I was a client and I came to some my agency teams and said, we're launching this new product, I would never really go to them and say it's purely an experiential play. And this may seem obvious, but it is
But that's
part
what you
of the
hear all the
portfolio.
time. I've heard that recently
I've heard
from
it from I've
clients.
heard
Yeah.
it from a TV. I've heard it from a TV standpoint. We're
Sure.
going to launch this thing fully digital, and it's like, my personal opinion is that you're not going to, just being singularly focused on one tactic is only going to limit the success of your campaign. And so naturally, as an experience-based agency, we've got to broaden our reach through content and
Right.
social applications and partnerships with influencers. Um, and that's the same advice that I would have given myself if I were, launching a new product and saying to my agency, hey, we're going to go full TV on this and we're not going to do anything else. I'm not sure that that's a really smart play.
No, I agree, and that actually goes very nicely towards my next question because to kind of play off of county fairs or state fairs or whatever, it made me think of silos. And
Yeah.
one of the things I think that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, both on the agency side and on the brand side, is the role of the agency. A lot of times gets a little bit of a pass, if you will, in, I'm going to use air quotes, owning part of this experiential marketing. Agencies can come up with wonderful ideas for a brand. They may be siloed, or they may be the only agency, or maybe they're the AOR. and they don't truly reflect the actual experience of the customer that you just talked about, which is really key to me. And I found this really a dangerous thing for a lot of folks that experiment in experiential marketing is you can create some amazing experience that are short and unique and wonderful, and then the actual experience that they have beyond that, which you were talking about, something tested over a decade, it falls completely flat of what the reflection is in that, and that becomes a really dangerous thing that agencies and brands need to work more closely together with. And I wish you would elaborate on that and make it a lot more eloquently said than what I'm alluding to. But I think I'm seeing you nod as we're talking about this on Zoom that you somewhat agree with this with somebody with experience on both sides as well.
Well, I mean, you
You can
have.
stop crying. I can see it on. No, I'm
No,
just
it's
kidding.
not the tear. No, the tears are just of joy,
Yeah,
Shark. They're not of fear.
I'll give you a
It's
virtual
really,
tissue.
it's really more about, I think, a relationship. We we tend to try and push back a little bit, and I think all agencies should do this, by the way, about being a partner with your client. Because if you are a service provider and not a partner, then you are always going to be kept at a distance. And for us, if I were running my own business, and again on the client side, I tried to do this. My mission was to ensure that everyone was playing off the same tablet, and so that what was happening in the media landscape was understood by the creatives, so that what they were creating was applicable to the places and where we were putting this, which was also applicable to my experience based team, which was also applicable to my digital marketing team. And that's not difficult. That's just about being a good operator and a good manager and leader of your team. Now, we certainly, I'm sure both of us have had clients that understand that really well, and then others that maybe don't, or don't put as much emphasis on it, for a host of different reasons. I mean, working with a major corporation like Ford Motor Company presents a lot of challenges, right? They don't move the ship in the harbor real fast, if you know what I mean. And so that can afford that can really complicate things. But I think over the years we've seen interagency teams develop where you've got a multitude of skill-setted agencies that come together, and at times those work really well if they're true partners on the business. But if they're merely service providers, then it's going to be a fleeting relationship at all times, and you're not really going to be sort of collaborative on the level that you should be with the dollars that are being spent in that space.
Well, again, as I told you, I use this phrase all the time. The confused buyer always says no, and this really is more of a conversion conversation and content conversation than anything. But again, the customer is not sitting back wondering, well, what did Christian and his team do? And what did Ford and their team do, or Adidas and their team, or the other 50 agencies? They're not taking the time. They're looking at a brand one way. They're not dissecting all the parts that went into it. And I wish that more agencies and I wish that more brands would have that honest conversation with themselves in order to better serve, if not their customer, the customer of their customer. And that's something that so often becomes a miss because agencies are doing a great job of serving their clients, but they're not necessarily always doing a great job of serving their clients and customer, whether it's in B2C
Yeah,
or B2B.
I mean, and you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to experience based marketing. If you're not thinking like a consumer would
Exactly.
think, you are going to produce something that has very little validity and very little connection to the challenge. I mean, yeah, we oftentimes, and all agencies see this. You get a brief, and you get, here's the customer profile, and that's all great. But one of the first things I think that's really important is to understand why this campaign exists beyond merely selling a product. What is it going to mean for a consumer in their life? What are the use cases? Are they familiar with this category? All of those pieces play a role in experience. You look at not that it's a market that we're, sort of tremendously involved with, but you look at the market around vaping products. People don't know how to use them necessarily. They don't know how bad they are for their health, or how damaging they can be. And so that experience is very different than, here is the latest Cliff Bar, right? People know what a Cliff Bar is. They know what an energy bar, they know what that looks and feels and tastes like. So it doesn't require that sense of exploration. It's like, does it taste good? Does it fit a price bracket that I'm interested in? Is there a connection to the brand that I'm familiar with? Great. And so those two parallels are really sort of that's the piece you have to think about as an agency. You've got to believe and think, if I were a consumer at this, that's on this placemat that I got from a client, what's going to really be empowering for me to want to be interested in what you're offering? And that's often overlooked. I got to be honest. I mean, that's a piece that we could all do better at.
Walk us through how we should look at a successful experiential marketing campaign today. If a brand came to you and said, we're wanting to create this experiential feeling around something, but whether it's a big brand or small, how do they really need to sort of scope this out and think of it from start to measurement?
Um, Good question. One is, I am a firm believer that if you are investing in experience-based marketing, your number one, or sort of the top reason that you might be looking at that, is attention. You need attention for a particular product or service that you are launching. And so if I were looking at a gauge of what's going to make it successful, are you gaining attention either in person, digitally, socially, no matter which tactic? Are you getting more attention and eyeballs and interest in your product? If the answer is yes, great. Number two is closer to sort of where we're trending these days with data, as I spoke about earlier, is what kind of attribution are you achieving with what you're doing? And the lower in the funnel you get with your activities and experiential, the higher the conversion rate or attribution you're going to see. And then the third bit that I would say is of paramount importance is, how are you reaching the masses outside of your experience? We Every agency has done campaigns where you do the entire campaign and 5,000 people across North America saw it. Well, okay, that has some value, no question, and there's probably some attribution associated with that. But that math is never going to pencil with a client, is it? When I spend X number of dollars on a cost per basis just to reach these 5,000 individuals. And so that third piece is really, how are you reaching beyond the four walls of your experience? And today, that's never been easier, from content and social and influencers, as I mentioned previously, where that has such a dramatic impact on the return on investment that you're achieving. So, in short, it's really attention. What type of conversion are we looking at in terms of direct sales attributed to the program? And then how are you reaching, the masses, I'll call it, outside the walls of whatever you're producing?
So I'm a big fan of influencer marketing, or at least I was pre-COVID, before the influencers kind of ruined a lot of Instagram posts and stuff like that. But what's your advice on integrating social and influencer marketing with experiential campaigns?
My advice would be that there has to consumers are really smart these days. They're a lot smarter than what they used to be. And when influencer marketing took off, it didn't matter if, one week you were, I don't want to say this the wrong way, you were shilling for Canon and you did a whole photo shoot and a whole campaign on Canon. And then the next week you were working on Toyota. And the week after that, you're on Dave's Killer Bread. That didn't matter necessarily as much, because people looked at you and your audience and said, well, there's some inherent value and some characteristic of your audience that we want to tap into. I think that's different today. I think today it matters that there is a deeper relationship with an influencer, and that might be time based, it might be content based, but more often than not, it just becomes a little fleeting. And I think for the influencer themselves, they want that. They want a longer lasting relationship where they live with the product day to day, and they're not just, here's the shiny happy, sort of Truman Show planting of the oatmeal on the kitchen table, and more so towards, hey, I use this product every day, and here are the different ways that I do it. And over time, I think that actually has an impact, not just for the brand that's working with the influencer, but for the influencer and their audience. That's the perfect sort of match in sort of my belief.
So, loaded question to an agency guy focused on experiential marketing, but your recommendation on how a brand or an advertiser should scout the right kind of agency for experiential marketing experience. If I'm sitting at my desktop in my home or in a cubicle today and I'm scouting firms to create this kind of experience, where do I go to find that? Because this is one of these, again, this is very blended, where it could look like you get everything from a large scale influencer marketing company or a large scale creative agency or a large scale digital agency. This blends all together very, very closely and succinctly. But if you know what you're looking for, how do I go about finding that if I'm trying to find the right kind of agency? I'm not trying to buy a generic MarTech tool. I'm trying to find a specific agency that can help deliver this and yet integrate it across all the different channels with all the other agencies as well.
Well, I'll start with the easy one first, which is you've got to have some kind of history of expertise in delivering results for your client. And that just goes across the board. And I know that seems obvious, but in the experiential world, if you don't know how to produce these things and have a regimented way in which you produce them, then your shelf life is going to be super short. But that's the easy one. I think the one that's a little bit more difficult, and I'd love your perspective on this, being in having experience in Martech, is really is a passion for human connection. And I often tell the story of when I first experienced an experience, I'll call it, and when I was growing up in Toronto, and I went to my first Blue Jays baseball game, and I remember distinctly walking up the staircase with my dad and looking down at the field and seeing the contrast between the green grass and the dirt and the hair on my neck standing up. And that is precisely what people that are cut from the same cloth as me that work in the experiential field have to have. When you create something for brands like Adidas, for instance, that just have to be so culturally relevant and have to be so on point from an experience standpoint that just people have to walk in and just be amazed by the overwhelming nature of it. That's a passion point for people who work in this industry. And it's really hard to communicate on a web page or in a case study. So I don't know in MarTech how you've experienced that, but like for XN, it's a lot easier.
When you're trying to niche something, and if I was re-asking that same question to you, would the experience you had though necessarily be for the Blue Jays or for the experience at a baseball stadium? Because the same
Yeah.
could be said if you walked into the old Yankee Stadium. The new one's okay; it's just a little bit different. Or Shea or Coors Field or somewhere else. I mean, that can be sometimes it's hard to overly niche experiential marketing and really creating that experience. A lot of it, I think you have to create content that answers the types of experience, but a lot of the content out there that you'll find on experiential marketing is really, really bad. And so
But but
it's hard to
but there's a
articulate that.
it is hard to articulate. Sorry to cut you off there. It's just there is but to answer your question again, just with that third bit is there's a subtlety that's involved with a
Yeah.
human interaction,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So like we're super passionate about whatever product it is, but if you're jamming a soccer shoe or a car in front of me and saying this is the next greatest thing and you must buy this, look, that's not there's got to be some level of understanding of what that consumer journey looks like and what the need state is for these individuals. And focusing a lot of attention on need states and motivations is a bit that I would encourage clients to learn about their agencies. Do they understand the need state of consumers?
Perfect.
Do
Yeah.
they understand what's motivating them to not just attend whatever it is you're producing, but motivating them to switch from one brand to another? I mean, I've got brands that it'd be really difficult for me to change my affiliation to because of the experiences I've had, but there's a motivation behind those that if someone tapped into those, there might be a chance. And so that's again another bit that's really hard to communicate outside of sitting in front of someone, sharing work, and demonstrating how passionate you are about those pieces.
Well, in experience, again, this is one of the hardest things to articulate because although you're trying to solve a problem, in technology, it's very easy to go find something to solve a specific problem if you're smart enough to discern through the bad technology tools.
Sure.
Most brands know that they have a problem, but it's hard to articulate that specific problem with their experience. And so most people wouldn't always know how to articulate the right kind of experience to benefit their own customers, let alone
No,
understand their own customers, which is a whole other conversation we could have on knowing your customer. But that's understanding how to help people fix a specific problem is always hard to do, and it's always
and
hard to
and how
articulate.
important that becomes then
That's the most important thing.
for
Absolutely.
your strategic teams to set up what it is that we are trying to achieve with this, so then your creative applications then are razor focused and sharp on a particular insight or motivation for consumers. So that just demonstrates sort of the cadence of how we would roll out something.
Give me a successful and a not successful, an unsuccessful effort you've seen in experiential marketing.
Okay, hard not to be self-serving here,
Oh,
so I will
absolutely.
I will stretch beyond
You
the
work at an
walls
agency.
of
You had me at
yeah.
hello.
I'll well, I mean, I always talk glowingly about the work in the motorcycle insurance industry that we've done with Progressive. So I'll give you that example, and I'll give you a good one that didn't have anything to do with us. The reason I really like the Progressive work is because I talked early on about partnership. And I talked early on about that understanding and relationship of an interagency team that work together. And Progressive has all those elements together. We have traditional agencies, we've got digital shops, we've got Match on Experiential, and we all came together along with creative teams to dramatically change the persona of Progressive Insurance in front of a motorcycle audience. And one of the key bits of that was understanding the motivations of why a consumer would want to change insurance. And so when you look at that work, it's black and it's white and it's gritty, and we embrace the beards for our staff, and there's no shiny happy flow white superstore, and that's all by design. And so that really demonstrates a call to action to those individuals that are at these events or who want to go to these events, because we're speaking their language. We're not speaking, shiny happy flow superstore, which has its place, no question, but not necessarily for the motorcycle crowd that just rode 3 days in to the Laconia Bike Fest with bees and flies and gnats in their beard. Like that's not what they want to see. Another campaign that I talk glowingly about is one that I think was exceptional. It's a couple years old now. The Honest Tea Company
Oh, yeah.
had an experiential sampling campaign that had no staff. Interestingly, I was re-looking at that just recently because of COVID and all the implications of that. Like, is there an opportunity to do an experience without any staff? The Honest Tea Company did this honesty index for different cities based on how, they had samples, and they said, make a donation for your sample. And based on that donation and the total by market, they ranked your cities based on how honest you were. There were plenty of people who just grabbed a sample and ran, and others that donated, and that was a tiered system and really spoke to their brand, Honest Tea. And also was a way to sort of create content, which it did. It won awards, I'm sure, but also fundamentally sampled their product to new customers. So not being a part of that, I don't know what the success metrics were around it, but I always look glowingly at that case study as well.
And it had Jessica Alba, which makes it a successful campaign.
Well,
Anything with her. So
there you
that's
go.
another side story. Unsuccessful. How do you look at an unsuccessful campaign though? And I
I
don't want
mean
you
that
necessarily pick on any brand or agency or partner, but maybe holistically, how should we look at pitfalls to avoid in order to not create an unsuccessful experiential
I think
campaign?
I think we touched on this earlier, Shark, a little bit, which was not necessarily paying enough attention to the consumer.
Amen.
Being more interested in necessarily like, hey, look at how big or how bright or shiny or how futuristic this is. I mean, look, many years ago when VR was becoming more accessible with Oculus Go and some of the newer products that were coming out, even phones and Google Cardboard, everyone was trying to jump into VR without really understanding, is it something the consumer even
Even
understands or
understands.
has a
Yeah.
need for? So, I mean, I think really understanding a need state and motivation still plays a role in that, but not getting too caught up in your own self interest as an agency to say, we need to go big. There's and this is not an example of a bad campaign, but when Bud Light did the campaign up here in Colorado, which was I'm blanking on the name at the moment, but it was Bud Light Anywhere or something like that, and it created this massive city, and it was all Bud Light focused. Like that was big for a reason, not big because the agency was interested in doing this big creative work. It was big because it had to facilitate all of these people, and it also had, tentacles into traditional advertising and digital. So understanding the need state of the consumer, not trying to overemphasize for your own self-interest what a campaign should deliver, and those are two hallmarks of how to start a campaign in the bad way.
Yeah.
If you're not respecting those principles.
So coming back to measurement then, so we look at it successful, unsuccessful. What measurement tools and or metrics do you recommend we consider in order to attribute success to a good experiential marketing campaign?
Yeah. Well, I mean, lower funnel activity, obviously, we want to be as integrated with brands as possible in order to understand what's the real sales impact, uh, uh, or share of voice, which is another big important piece. Content and views are obviously still important on some level, depending upon the brand. Where does that sit? And those metrics are always really important. Sheer numbers are also important. I mean, if you're a brand that focuses on scale and not necessarily depth of experience, then what you're investing with us, and I can count on many hands the number of clients that have come to us and said, I just need scale with this. We're a peanut butter brand and we just got to get to everyone because 97% of this world knows what peanut butter is. It's already in their pantry. I don't need to explain what it is. Whereas for some brands, that's very different. And so, those are sort of, I would just call it broad strokes metrics, share of voice, sales metrics that we would want to integrate with with a brand views, and how that attribution model has been respected. And even conversion rates is another piece. That conversion means many different things to different clients. That means a sale in some case. That means an opt-in. That means, hey, I want to continue a conversation with you meaning the brand. And that's also a metric that Experiential, can deliver upon.
It's very interesting with experiential marketing to sort of look at, you can apply a lot of performance based metrics to it, but a lot of traditional marketers would argue against, those kind of things deterring away from. It's like
Fight that
talking about
battle every day.
content versus paid advertising.
I fight that battle every day, Shark. And look, I'm never going to be in a position as an experience-based marketer to walk into a client's meeting and say, look at all this data from TV and your traditional spend, because that's got a 70-year head start, okay? And any metric you want, television can provide you, right? Whether it be, OTC, or whether it be direct, or whether it be traditional, there's tons of metrics associated with that. Now, Experiential's come a long way in a very short period of time and continues to evolve to where now I can go back to that analogy I used earlier, which is the scalpel versus the hatchet. And for a lot of clients, that's really important. You've got very precise customers that you're trying to seek. If I'm a luxury brand and I'm trying to achieve a singular purchase, that's the second largest purchase you'll make in your lifetime outside of a house. It'll be a car or a boat or some kind of a motorized vehicle. Look, that's hunting with a scalpel. I'm not looking for a State Fair mass. So yeah, I mean, the metrics are important. They grow continually. Analytics are important on both the front end and the back end, so long as that we are always back to that middle ground of what is the consumer journey, what is the motivation, and what is the need state.
How should someone, I don't know if you've heard about COVID-19, it's this fun thing that everybody got involved with in the spring, but how should someone look at experiential marketing in a post spring? We're recording this after the March shutdown, but as companies emerge out of this, how should they look at their experiential marketing differently? Obviously, the in-store experience is obviously different, but how, do you have any sort of different perspective looking at it post-COVID, or
I
say
do think that
post shutdown?
Yeah, I mean, there's two bits to this. One is I'm a brand and I'm launching something right now, and I've got to get in front of consumers, and there's a distinct path that I would share with you on that front. And then there's this commentary we hear, which is the new normal, and I have a distinct position on that. So let me start with you're a brand right now, Shark, and you've got to get in front of consumers. What can you do?
Oh, I have a
You,
book that's I'm delaying because of all this crap. So
there you go. So like, you can't necessarily rely upon the events that you used to go to or the traditional tools that you used to. And so I guess my position on this is I tried to learn from direct to consumer brands. And I tried to look at them to say, what if, we've gotten so used to, with 2 clicks of this mouse, anything from a sofa to laundry detergent ending up on my doorstep. So can I do that with experience? Can I deliver an experience directly to a consumer at their own sort of choosing, at their own destination, and do so with some scale that delivers that face-to-face interaction, or in front of consumer interaction? And so we have a model where we use that, and for clients right now that's becoming enormously successful. And ironically, it was developed about a year and a half ago. So we've been working like this for a while, but it's just come into its own, much like Zoom meetings have come into its own, because it allows you to still operate in an experience-based format, but not necessarily doing so with partnership events or in large-scale activities where consumers have a little bit of anxiety. The second piece to your question is, what happens after? And I don't think there is, my personal take, I don't think there's a new normal. I really don't. I think eventually there is an appeal to go back to the old way, which is we still are going to want to go to football games because of that hair on the neck piece I talked about. We're still going to want to go to concerts. And I only think that happens once there's a vaccine in your arm that says like, okay. And the reason I get there is not because I'm in experiential marketing and I think, hey, everything will just get back to normal. Yeah, there'll be some subtlety differences, but what I point to is our need as humans to interact with other people. And we've seen that with drive-by birthday parties. We've seen it with, drinks in the driveway, perhaps with a DMZ zone in between families where we're keeping at a distance. There's a need for us to have interactions with other people. And that really, man, that gets to the core of experience-based marketing, right? You are in a moment with other people and there's an energy and a sense of belonging in there. And there's a message that comes to you. It's very inspirational at times. And I think that will return. And in fact, not just return, there's going to be more of an explosion with that because there's this need to just come back together. And check back in with me in 8 months, hopefully sooner, when maybe I'm wrong and hopefully I'm right. But we really, I think, have a responsibility to keep that front and center, that it was successful because of this human need. And that need isn't necessarily going to change entirely. It might be subtly different. But I believe it comes back, if not stronger, because of that pent up demand and need that we have.
well, I've been on several dives since the pandemic, and the only thing that was different about my normal shark diving excursions is I wore a mask on the boat or in the plane, but I still had that human need to go swim
Yeah.
with large animals that could chew me up. So,
And is that going to change? Is that going to change post pandemic for you?
no, I'll still be ignorant enough to go swim with large sharks, which freak people out like you. So,
Yeah,
um,
which has its own
but I,
entire platform
I,
of conversation.
well, I
But
wore a
not for,
hazmat suit on the plane with a mask that made my
yeah,
wife happy, but she wasn't worried about the shark. So that tells you something something different. So,
yeah.
what are the kind of top of mind things that you're thinking about overall as we sort of get toward the close? What are those sort of big things that we need to be thinking about that are top of mind for you today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think top of mind, the piece that we haven't touched on yet, which might have been a good answer for sort of, what are you looking, if you're a client looking at this, an agency, what are you looking for? I distinctly believe that purpose and truth are now, they, even before pandemic, but even more so now, are becoming more visible and more important for consumers. There was a recent study that I quoted from Cohn and Peter Novelli, which was 89% of consumers today, this was done about 2 weeks ago, believe purpose is demonstrated through how the company benefits the society and the environment, but they want to see it with actions. And man, if that isn't just hitting the nail directly with the hammer, that purpose and truth and being transparent as an organization are things that you're going to get called out on. I mean, a Pepsi ad last year with Kylie Jenner, and boy, that really didn't hit the mark. And people called Pepsi out on the mat for that. But Patagonia did something different, and they, maybe a bit politically motivated, but it spoke to their core audience and group when they took their tax breaks and invested that in environmentally sensitive products. That's purpose, that's mission, that's truth. And brands that embrace that more so than they are today, even one small iteration or degree of difference there, Shark, is going to have an impact on their business. And I fundamentally align with that at our core, as an agency, but as a person as well. And I think that comes through in the work that we do.
Kylie Jenner will be just fine.
Oh, she'll be great.
But she should have had a Dr. Pepper with her instead. So, as few questions as we get to know you a little bit better. We've talked about Miatas already, but what's your favorite movie ever? I'm a big believer in the in-theater movie experience, but that's all gone to pot. So what is your favorite movie ever, whether at home or in theater?
Yeah, this is going to really damage my credibility.
Oh, don't say The Notebook. Don't say it.
No, it's definitely not The Notebook. It's even worse than that.
No.
There are movies that when they come across the television late at night, you gotta watch them. And I'm a big fan of just silly comedy like Step Brothers and Dumb and Dumber. Like those things to me, we could recite those lines day and night. I mean, another one that I really like, it's very old now, is called Amadeus. It tells the story of Mozart. And there's this, interesting dialogue and a huge storyline that you never really see. And then, lastly, I think, I guess more recently, it's cliche to say it, but Shawshank to me is still a great flick, just for one line.
Oh yeah.
You better get busy living or get busy dying. And that's sort of a credo for me personally of living, but also it sort of speaks to that energy and passion that I bring to the workplace.
So interesting collection. You've got Dumb and Dumber, Amadeus, and Shawshank. Of those three, what's your favorite movie ever? You got to pick one.
I gotta go back to the Dumb and Dumber phase. Like there's no commitment level like Jim Carrey chipping his own tooth to be playing a role in a film, and you got to give him some sense of
that Austrian accent, absolutely.
I know that I've completely damaged my reputation, but I don't give a damn. Like that's just the way it's going to be.
Well, you're also in Colorado, so that explains a little bit of it. So, Christian, I ask this of all my guests. I'm even asking people that live in the mountains in Boulder, but what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
My favorite kind of shark, I think the hammerhead is one of the most unique animals, period. So I'll say hammerhead just by way of the way that they look. I don't know much about them. My kids could probably tell me more about them given their viewing of Shark Week, but hammerheads to me have that aerodynamic look, sort of flat in the front, curvaceous in the back, and shark fin in the middle. And I think from a design standpoint, they're beautiful.
Well, Christian, it's a special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Cannot wait.
All right. Number 1, client of yours, Flo or Jamie? Let's talk a little progressive.
Jamie's.
I see him on every other commercial.
Jamie's got the humor. Jamie's got the humor angle.
Yeah.
If you were telling me like you got to pick one, like Flo to me has played enough roles over the year, but right now Jamie's got my vote.
All right. Number 2, James Harden or LeBron James?
Oh, James Harden all day. I mean, the beard, the moves he has. I could talk ad nauseum about how he's changed the game of basketball. Not what you asked me. James Harden, by far.
What also helps, he's an Adidas client.
Yeah, but it really doesn't.
A Nike guy.
Yeah, but to me, it doesn't even have to do with that. Honestly, it doesn't. I know it sounds self-serving, but like James Harden is a cerebral, intelligent. Not that LeBron isn't, but like he's got a very different mission in his world.
Number 3, it's the Toronto Blue Jays Stadium or Colorado Rockies Coors Field.
That's not even close either. I mean, playing at the Rogers Center in Toronto is not exactly a great experience, and nor was the previous one at Exhibition Stadium, which was effectively a CFL football stadium that was turned into a baseball stadium. Yeah. So, like, God help you if you fell on the AstroTurf. It's definitely Coors Field here in Colorado.
Yeah, and you don't have to say sorry if they strike out or miss or anything. So
nor do I on a regular basis.
Exactly. So number 4, Not exactly Club Series, but we're going to ask a racing question. Formula One racing or IndyCar racing?
IndyCar's come a long way. Formula One for me is still the epitome of technology and scrutiny. There's a historical relevance. My daughter's name is Senna for a reason, which was aptly named by my wife, I will point out, not by me. So I definitely married up.
Is she
So
Brazilian?
yeah, she is not Brazilian.
No. Eu falo português, so I just wondered.
Yeah.
I
No,
love
she's
Ayrton Senna. He was the bomb.
She's Polish, so she might have said something like his name should be Kubica.
Yeah.
And I won't spell it for you, but no, definitely Formula One.
Well, and number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits.
Okay.
I don't really even have a reason other than they're probably super fatty and heavy, and they're good with gravy. I mean, there you go.
There you go. So, Christian, where can people find out more about you, keep up with what you're doing in the experiential marketing space and more?
Happy to engage on the Twitterverse at cganilo. That's CGANILO. LinkedIn's always a great place. I welcome and oftentimes engage in a lot of conversations with industry professionals on LinkedIn. And obviously through our website at match.com, or matchmg.com, I should say.
But totally LinkedIn website.
Yeah, definitely. If you're going to go there, you're going to find me in a different state, but definitely not that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a swipe left or swipe right, different conversation. So, Christian, thank you so very much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So there was my conversation with Christian Gani, the Managing Director at Match Marketing Group. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, experiential marketing, as Christian said, gives you the chance to create and explain a narrative for your brand. I further mentioned that so much of the advice out there is just a bunch of in-person examples you see where someone did something amazing at a store. And while important, I always question the beyond that with how it actually helped the customer as opposed to not only just the brand. So keep that in mind and don't just get caught up in the theory of it all. Really trust in your relationship with your customer and not just the air quote spectacles you create. Second, we spoke a little bit about what to expect and to measure. He reminded us that unsuccessful experiential marketing exists when you don't focus on the customer. So true. This is important for agencies to consider as well because sometimes agencies forget about the customer of their customer, but your brand sure won't. So as he said, don't get too caught up in your own self-interest as an agency. Great point. And his points on creating a successful campaign in short, and I'll paraphrase here, are 1, are you getting more attention? 2, what kind of attribution are you achieving with what you're doing? And 3, how are you reaching the masses outside of their experience? Third, so here's an example, especially for baseball fans, but works for any sport or concert goers even. You walk into these majestic venues and often find yourself in awe of the experience. You see the beautifully green grass, passionate fans in their team colors, sitting in tens of thousands of seats, massive columns of concrete and steel built to withstand the test of time. But then think, is it the experience of that specific venue, whatever specific stadium you visited? Or is it any similar product or service? I mean, every major league stadium has exactly the same things described. So focus on elevating that narrative and make it different. Sometimes you can think that your experience is enough, while other times you can realize that there may be 29 other similar stadiums that all have the same popcorn, hot dogs, and often the same beer. So your storefront may not be a majestic venue, but do not discount the opportunity to make that experience majestic nonetheless. It truly will matter to the fans of your brand. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. So all I would ask is that you make the experience of your life amazing. Just add more shark. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.